Hey, Lindsay, how are you today?
I'm feeling great today, Aubrey, full of energy. How about you? How you feeling?
I'm great. I have a question for you. Do
Okay.
you ever bicker with friends or family members?
Yeah, for sure. I used to bicker with my
Same.
mom a lot, actually,
Oh, yeah.
when I was a teenager. I think sometimes a mom teenage girl relationship can be a little bickery at times, at least in my
Yes.
experience. But
I remember bickering a
yeah.
ton with my siblings where my dad would say, "It's the Bickersons." Like that was our new last name, the Bickersons.
That's so cute. I love that.
Yeah, because we would bicker a lot. So the guys, this means like to argue and not in a very nice way, right? You
Right.
might be like criticizing each other, calling names. You're just
Yeah.
like, and there are several ways to say this. We got a great question about this word and
Yeah.
some related terms.
Yeah, we're going to really dig into what this means and the difference between this and other ways of essentially fighting, right?
Yeah.
Light
Arguing.
fighting, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
arguing. So
Mhm.
Mendoza Bismarck says, I have a question. Are squabble and bicker synonyms? Is it the same meaning? Now, this is a high level question from Mendoza.
Yes, absolutely. Because she or he has heard both of these terms. It's like, do these mean exactly the same thing? Or are there connotations? Are they a little different? So we're going to share these two and a couple more related terms and really get into it so that you guys have all the details you need to use these fun terms.
Fantastic. But first, before we get into that, I do want to make sure our listeners, we want to say a special thank you to our listeners in the iOS Android app who left us a rating and a review. So, special thank you to Nabil Zaitoun from Saudi Arabia, Bahar 4433, Rai Roller. Those are in the iOS app. And then in the Android app, we had Mohammed El Mudbaj and Guillermo Nives. And Guillermo says, amazing English podcast, guys. I usually listen to this podcast every single morning. It's useful and helpful for making us learn English with connection, not perfection.
So awesome.
Wow, we love reading your reviews, guys. Please go ahead and leave the app or the podcast wherever you're listening to this audio or video in YouTube if you want to do it there. Leave us a review and a rating so we can see what you think of the show. We'll try to read your name out loud on the show. Okay?
Yes, and we
Yeah.
apologize if we don't pronounce it correctly. We're doing our best. I think you did a good
Yes.
job there, Lindsay. But I say this in when we have open conversation club. I'm like, let me know if I'm pronouncing your name
Yeah.
wrong because I'm just
Yeah.
reading it with my English pronunciation and
Oh, we
might be
try
wrong.
our best. We try our
We do our
best.
best.
All right. So, what is the main difference between squabble and what do we
And
need to know
bicker.
here to answer that question? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main difference is squabble implies volume. Like it's a loud, noisy argument when you look up the definition. And if I called something a squabble, I'm imagining my kids yelling at each other, arguing,
Hmm.
whereas
Hmm.
bickering can be very quiet. My kids often bicker in the
Yeah.
back of the car so that I can't even hear. They're just like elbowing each other and saying mean things to each other very quietly so they don't get in trouble.
So the key difference is noise. Is that what you're
Mhm.
saying, Aubrey?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Would you agree? Would you ever call it a squabble if someone were quietly arguing?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I know the answer to this. I'm not sure if you're average native speaker, maybe I'm below average. I don't know. I don't know if I would be able to offhand without researching it really define the
I had to
difference.
think
I
about it, and then when I looked it up in the dictionary and the definition says loud, noisy argument for squabble, I
Okay.
was like, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it a
Okay.
squabble if they're
Squabble.
quietly arguing. That's bickering. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
bickering
yeah.
can get loud too, but it's not always whereas a squabble, yeah, we do use this where I grew up, we would call we would say someone is squabbling, but only if they're arguing very loudly, noisily.
Interesting. All right. Well, okay. So that's it. So bicker could be a little quieter. Is that what we're saying here? It can
Mhm.
be a little quieter, could be
Yeah.
petty.
I'll often see squabble. We'll see it in the news when we're talking about like a customer getting very angry and loud in a store, and then say like they were squabbling if two
Huh.
people were fighting. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's interesting. But so let's dive in first to bicker. This just
Okay.
means to argue about something, but it's usually something trivial or petty. So we'll often say
Mm.
children are bickering because it's
Yes.
about something that really doesn't matter. That's the adults are often like,
Yeah.
"Does this really matter? Why are you arguing?"
Yeah, it's trivial. That is very inherent in that word. That concept that something is trivial. That's clear for sure.
Yeah.
Something unimportant.
Right?
or
I might say,
something.
"My children often bicker about who gets the remote control." This is very
Yeah.
accurate. Like, why are we fighting? This
It
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
matter who gets it, but they will argue about it. That's bickering. Or just saying something to someone, please stop bickering. Stop bickering. It's
Yes.
unimportant. Okay.
Exactly, right? Because if something were an important conversation, we wouldn't
Hmm.
call it bickering, right? We would call it an argument or a heated
Yeah.
debate or discussion. That's very different. This definitely implies that it's unimportant. It's trivial.
Aubrey, I imagine with 4 kids doing road trips, you probably encounter this quite a lot, right? In the backseat. Or
Yes.
do you even do road trips?
We do. We'll drive from Arizona all the way up to Idaho, so that's like 15 hours. We have started breaking down and letting our children have, like, screen time of, like, they each
Okay.
have their iPad because I can't with the bickering.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't wanna hear
it's a
it.
lot. It's a lot. So that helps for sure. But yeah, I know my brother and
Yeah,
we didn't have screens in those days in the 80s and the 90s. And we used to
right.
do long road trips, maybe from New Hampshire down to South Carolina.
And there was some
And yeah.
bickering.
Oh yeah, there was some bickering.
The parent, "I will turn this car around if you
Yeah,
don't stop
totally.
bickering."
Oh my
'Cause
God,
the
that is the
arguments are always
classic
very
line. Yeah.
petty, trivial, like,
Oh,
petty
for
means
sure.
unimportant when it's about, like, an argument, right? But this
Yeah,
is
the kids are
interesting,
just
petty can
tired.
also be used to describe a person, and then it means something
Yeah.
sort of different. It means they're focused on trivial matters in sort of a
Yes.
small-minded, spiteful way, right?
Yes, for sure, for sure. Also, not a great thing to be
Right?
around someone who's petty, right? Yes.
Exactly. Petty arguments
Yeah.
and petty people. We don't want
Ah,
either.
stay away from it. All right, so should we go through squabble then?
Yeah, this means to quarrel or argue noisily, but also about something trivial. If someone is, in like a heated political debate and it gets loud, we still wouldn't call that a squabble because it's
Okay,
still like important issues and they're
got it.
passionate. A squabble
Mm.
definitely is still something petty or trivial.
Mm.
And it is a little
Yes.
more rare, for sure. I definitely hear bicker more. There are other terms I hear more. Squabble is a little more rare. And you said you weren't as familiar with it, right?
Well, I know the word, but
Yeah.
to define it on the spot,
Mm.
a little trickier
What's
for
that
me, the
mean?
difference between bicker and squabble. To me, yeah, broadly
Mm.
when I think about it, it's fighting, right?
Mhm.
Both are fighting, of course. There's a funny meme out there on Instagram somewhere talking about Bostonians and how couples in Boston, like you'll just be walking down the street in the North End, which is Little Italy, or any part of Boston, honestly, it doesn't matter. And you'll see couples just screaming at each other. It's this Boston attitude, this like East Coast dramatic, not afraid
Interesting.
to scream at each other on the street. It's not like it's not domestic violence, but there is just a dramatic fight. They're
Yes.
not afraid to,
Loud
as they say,
arguing.
air their dirty laundry in public. It's very different from what you might see in Colorado. You would never see
Okay.
that here in Denver.
Interesting. Yes, and you could
Yeah.
because you rarely will know what they're talking about, we
Yeah.
might just call it a squabble, right? I heard a couple squabbling on the street because I
Mhm.
don't know if it was trivial or not.
It's pretty funny. It's there are memes out there. It's hilarious. I love that. I love it. So squabble. Let's move on, Aubrey, to the next one, shall we?
Yeah, so this is quarrel, which really means the same thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be trivial, right? It means sort of a heated argument. It can be a
Mhm.
verb or a noun, like we were having a quarrel or we were quarreling. But this
Mhm.
could be about, something more serious, more important. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
could be a little more intense, more of a substantive topic, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
I'm often quarreling with my children, and it's maybe about rules or about their behavior, right? It's not, something trivial. I would never bicker with my children because that's, like,
oh.
petty and trivial, but we might quarrel.
They might quarrel. So, yeah, saying something like they're always quarreling or let's not quarrel anymore. Less common for me. I don't tend to use this word.
You'd probably say
Um,
argue instead, right?
yeah,
We're
argue
always
or
arguing, let's
fight.
not argue anymore. Quarrel means the same thing, but it is less common. It sounds a little
Okay.
more formal, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And then I love the next one, which is lock horns. We were in a situation just last week while we were hiking in Slovenia where we were hiking around cows and the cows that have the horns.
Yes,
And there was a huge herd of cows with lots of babies. And cows are generally not violent, but when any animal species has their baby and their baby seems to be threatened, you have to be really careful.
they
They
get
were right
protective.
on the hiking trail. We were in
Oh,
the
wow.
Slovenian Alps and we didn't know what to do. We had to start like banging a tree to
Oh,
like
wow.
get bigger and try to get the cow to move. And then all of a sudden they were looking at us and they had these horns and I was freaking out. It was so
What if
crazy.
they charge us? Oh, that
What
is
if they
really
charge
frightening. And
us?
you weren't it wasn't like a place where you could really go off the trail. You had
No,
to get
you
them to
because
move.
they were everywhere. They were like off the trail,
Oh,
up the trail,
wow.
down the trail, on the trail. There
My
was nowhere to
goodness.
go. And everywhere you turned, there was another big one, adult one with horns looking at you. It was crazy.
The
So maybe
horns
that'll
are what really makes it scary, right? You could just they're so sharp, you
Yes.
could get gored. So this
Yes.
lock horns, right? It means to argue, but it comes from animals that fight and lock their horns together. It means for their horns to be
Yes.
like connected.
You got it.
Deer, elk do this, right? Lots of animals when
Mm.
they butt heads together and lock horns.
Yeah, probably. Have you ever heard of an ibex?
Yes.
Ibex? Yeah. Have you seen one?
Well,
Have you
at the
seen an ibex?
zoo, there are ibex at the
Oh,
Phoenix
at the
Zoo, but I've never seen
zoo.
one in real life or,
Okay, so we saw them
in
in
the
the
wild.
in the Alps in Slovenia. They
Wow.
have them up there. They're sitting on the plains, and the size of those horns, Aubrey,
Wow. They're so long.
terrifying. They're
Yeah.
huge, 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 like bigger than their bodies. I mean,
Wow. Wow,
it's
wow, wow.
insane. So maybe this is giving our listeners the picture of locking horns, a very intense fight,
Yes, you gotta be
right?
ready for
Where
that if you go to Slovenia.
yeah,
But, yeah, we
where
use this idiomatically, right? And it's not just any argument, like, this is a very heated debate if people are locking horns. It means they
yeah,
disagree. Like,
yeah.
you're not gonna just say this for any discussion.
And I think the key piece here is that both parties are very engaged and aggressive,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
definitely. Like, if you say, "We started discussing the environment and really locked horns," it would mean, like,
Uh-huh.
we really disagreed and started getting heated, like, passion from both sides.
Right. You found that sticking point where you
Right.
realize you didn't agree, and then the passion up to few levels, right? So, wow.
Exactly. So if you immediately said, "You know what? Agree to disagree," and stop talking, you wouldn't say you locked horns. This means,
Right.
like, we got into it. We
We
were
backed
both, like,
away. Yeah.
passionately sharing our opinion, and it got a little heated
Yeah.
if we say we
Yeah.
locked horns.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You have to be very choosy about when you do this, right? You have to make
Yeah,
your choices, especially in politics season. And, we're
right.
doing a whole series on politics. Check out episode 2284 to get episode 1 there, guys.
Yes.
But one other example, the coach locked horns with some of the parents about their behavior at games. That is an issue these days,
Yes,
right?
I've seen this a lot, where this actually happened at a soccer game I was at not that long ago, where parents
Mm,
were, sort of yelling at their kids, either telling them how to play or criticizing maybe, and the coach went over and was like,
wow.
"You're gonna need to leave if you don't stop,
Yeah.
like, let me coach the kids," right? And so
Yeah.
he was willing to lock horns with the parents because he saw that it was having a negative impact on the players.
Of course. Oh my gosh. That's so hard for a kid to see
Yeah.
their parent get so into it. I can't even imagine.
Like, just support, like, parents, just support, just like, "Yay,
Just
good
support.
job." That's all you
Doesn't
need to
matter.
say.
Doesn't matter if they win or lose. Just be there
Right.
for them.
Just support.
Yeah.
Let the coach
Yes,
say everything else.
please. Exactly correct.
Totally.
Yes. Okay, Aubrey, let's put this all into a role play. And clearly, we're talking about, contentious issues here, right?
Yeah.
So
So you
we'll
and I are
get into it.
discussing a quarrel that we overheard at a restaurant in this role play. I'll start us.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Those two really locked horns at the end.
I wonder if they'd been quarreling for a while and it just came to a head tonight.
Probably. That's usually how it happens. You're just sort of bickering about something and then it escalates.
I've had my share of squabbles. I try not to do it in public though. And that
Yes.
kind of calls back to the idiom that I used when I was talking about Bostonian couples fighting in the street, air your dirty laundry in public,
Exactly, right?
Is
You
that
try
what
to
that means to
avoid
you?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
right?
right? This means you're having an argument or you're saying something about, like, your family,
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
should be personal. You're saying it in public or to other people. When we say
Yeah.
you're airing your dirty laundry in public.
I think it's kind of an old-fashioned term,
Mhm. I
because
still
now
hear
we have
it
social
though, yeah.
media and everyone's sharing everything on social, but you hear it for sure. It's appropriate for that. So this is a little bonus idiom for our listeners today. Should we go through this role play?
Yeah, I started by saying, "Wow, they really locked horns at the end." So this means, like, they were just kind of arguing and then they really got into it, right? They maybe started yelling or at least speaking more passionately, more heatedly.
You got it. And then I said, I wonder if they'd been quarreling for a while. And here we're using past perfect progressive, right? If they
Yeah.
had been quarreling. Interesting use of grammar.
Yeah, and I say quarreling. Do you say quarreling? It might be,
Did
like,
I say
pronounced
quarreling?
differently
Quarreling,
depending on where
quarreling.
you live.
Yeah,
It's
I guess
interesting,
I
yeah. I say quarrel, but it's kind of hard to say. Quarreling, it's like in the back of
quarreling.
your throat.
Quarreling. I think maybe you're right. I might be mispronouncing it. We gotta get to the bottom of that. Maybe we'll come back for a bonus episode.
Yeah, right. I definitely in my
Quarrel,
regional dialect, we
quarrel.
said quarreling,
Mm,
quarrel and
yeah.
quarreling, but it is a little
Yeah.
tricky to say. It's spelled, hopefully you have the transcripts because it's spelled very strangely too.
Yeah, you need the app to get the transcripts, by the way, guys, or you could also get them by email,
Mm.
allersenglish.com/subscribe. Okay, then you said what, Aubrey?
Then I said, "Yeah, this is often how it happens. You're bickering and then something escalates." So like they maybe
Uh-huh.
were just kind of having a conversation that was a little more trivial arguing, and then if it escalates, that's when you might lock horns. It might get more passionate.
Good. And then I said, I've had my share of squabbles. So that means I've been in fights too, right? But I
Yeah,
try
right?
not
I've
to do
had
it
some
in
loud,
public.
noisy arguments, but try to
Yeah,
try to keep it private.
you got it. You got it. Aubrey, there's a great episode that we think relates to this one that our listeners should check out now. What is that
Yes,
one?
exactly. It was episode 2257 right here on the Allers English podcast. This was you and Michelle. It was called Let's Bury the Hatchet: How to End an Argument in English. There were some great phrases there, like to be at each other's throats. I was
Mhm.
going to share that one here, and then I saw you had already done it. So I did lock horns instead. But there was some great vocab in that episode. So as soon as you're done, listening today, if you missed that one, scroll up and listen to 2257.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about connection on this show, but there are moments when the connection breaks and you do engage in an argument, and that's okay. That's part of life, right? We know that's part of life, and we're giving you the skills to talk about those moments too,
Yeah, to
right?
bury the hatchet, forgive and move on. You're going to quarrel, you're going to squabble. This is a great takeaway that like these things are going to happen. You need the vocabulary to describe it. But
Yeah.
then also, right, 2257, how to forgive and move on.
Yeah, for sure. What's a takeaway for today, though, Aubrey? Where would we leave
Yeah.
our listeners? Watch out for cows in Slovenia and
That's it, right? Watch out for the cows in Slovenia, the ibex. But yeah, we all are going to have these moments, whether it's trivial or not. We might be quarreling or bickering. And today's vocab will help you spark up a conversation about this because it is an interesting thing to connect about, whether it's somebody else that's squabbling loudly or about your own experience with bickering and arguments.
All right, fantastic, Aubrey. Thanks for being on with me today. I'll see you in the next one. All
Awesome.
right.
See you next
All
time.
right. Bye.
Bye.